Tonight we're going to read some scary short stories. Please don't read this. Sorry, mate. Got to. Alright, let's begin. What was that? Short story collections don't get enough love. Everyone wants that epic story that breaks your heart and then puts it back together again, which is cool and all, but me, I'm a big short story guy. We're all getting increasingly busy, and for me at least, it's never been more important to be able to pause, take a breath, and lose yourself in a book for a bit, and then tackle the real world again. Often we only get time for a short reprieve, and I'm here to tell you there's no better way to spend that time than to hide away somewhere and sneak in a short story. With the short stories in the collections I'm going to discuss today, you hit the ground running, because the authors only have so many pages to explain where am I, who are these people, what's wrong, and give you some form of resolution. Then turn the page, buckle up, and see where the next story is going to take you. If you perhaps aren't a seasoned short stories reader, but you're a big fan of anthology shows like the Twilight Zone and Black Mirror, I think you're going to like a lot of the books on this list. So stick around for a short while as I tell you about the best short story collections I've ever read and you should check out. What up, fiction fan? Welcome to Down to Read if this is your first time here, or thanks for coming back if you're a regular. Either way, I see you and I appreciate your patronage. My name is Steven, and today we're going to talk about the 5 best short story collections that I've ever read. No genre is off limit, but you will find there is a scary number of horror collections represented. This is partially due to my bias towards books with darker themes, but also I feel the horror genre really lends itself well to short stories. Often the less you know about the world, the creepier it is. In fact, now I think about it, even the lit fic and the sci-fi collections I'm going to discuss get a wee bit dark. First I'll discuss a couple of honourable mentions which I feel deserve a shout out and to be on your radar. Then I'll talk about my top 5 short story collections in ascending order from great to the best short story collection I've ever read. But anyway, that's enough of the intro. Let's talk some books. Honourable Mention, The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. This one I felt deserved a mention for 2 reasons. One, it inspired some of my favourite media of all time, H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu and the first season of True Detective. 2, it has one of my favourite short stories of all time, The Repairer of Reputations. The titular King in Yellow is a play that if you read will make you go mad. The first 4 stories in this collection revolve around this insanity-inducing play, including the aforementioned Repairer of Reputations, in which the protagonist, Castaigne, has suffered a head injury, and while recovering from his head injury, he reads The King in Yellow. Narrators don't get much more unreliable than Castaigne. To achieve his destiny, Castaigne seeks the help of the so-called Repairer of Reputations, a physically deformed man who frequently gets into bloody fights with his cat. As great as this story is, and really all of the 4 King in Yellow centric stories are good, the other stories in this collection have no real link to the King in Yellow beyond being set in bohemian areas of Paris or New York. What I guess I'm saying is only the first 60 pages or so of this collection are really worth your time, so maybe borrow this one from the library. Be warned though, there are excerpts from the King in Yellow play in these first 4 stories, but I felt fine after reading them. Honourable Mention, The Hotel by Daisy Johnson. This collection tells stories that all take place over the life of a damned hotel, from its construction to its destruction. We learn how this mysterious place affected people who worked there, visited there, and were trapped there. While there is this overarching connection between the stories, Johnson takes it one step further by linking events that happened in one story to a tale later in the collection. My favourite example of this is where early in the book we read about a guest who interacts with a monster, and then later in the collection there's a tale about what happens after that story from the monster's perspective. If you're anything like me, that premise and setting is probably all sounding amazing, which is why I thought it deserved an honourable mention. There was just something about this book that didn't quite click for me, which prevented it from sneaking into my top 5. I felt like I was never really able to connect with the characters, like we're being shown the events of this fateful hotel, but we're not really living them. That's it for the honourable mentions. Both good books that are worth your time. But you know what that sound means? It's now time for your feature presentation. Book 5, Rejection by Tony Tulatimity. This is the book that I ummed and ahed about the most when I was putting together this list. The theme of this book, rejection, is in my opinion one of the most universal experiences that we can all relate to. This book, however, is perhaps the least universally appealing of all the books I'm going to talk about today. While it is not a horror book, I told you they wouldn't all be horror. It has parts that are gross, disturbing, and it will make you feel uncomfortable. Towards the end of the third story in this collection, you will be thinking, why the f am I reading this? The level of detail we hear about a character's sexual fantasy reaches comical levels. But Tony always has a reason for taking on this journey, even if it isn't evident until the last page of the story. To talk more about the theme of this book, Tony covers all forms of rejection. In the first story, The Feminist, a man feels like the universe owes him a girlfriend, but he keeps ending up in the friend zone, so he turns to an incel community for support. In the next story, Pix, a woman has a one-night stand with a friend, and then she spirals when he doesn't want it to become anything more serious. As the stories go on, they cover people where the world has rejected their sexual desires, and where they have rejected their identity. Not all characters are bad people. Most of them we empathize with to at least some extent, but almost exclusively, they all do things that you would vehemently disapprove of. The thing is, almost all of them also do something that you'll be able to relate to, even if it's something you're not proud of. I'll put my hand up and say, in my younger years, I sent that essay of a text to a girl I liked, who understandably never replied. There's a character who deals with her emotions by watching all 9 seasons of The Office. I felt seen.
I probably should have told you I don't need a ride now because Jim can take me home after, so you're off the hook.
Okay, great. Off the hook. Excellent.
Right.
Okay, cool.
I got this.
All right, have fun. Don't drink and drive.
So look, this is a really good book, uncomfortably relatable, but not a book I'd recommend for everyone. A book you either love or hate. I'd also say the first half of this collection is much stronger than the second half, which is why it's number 5 on my list. It has changed the way I view some people in my life though, and it may change the way you judge people too. Don't judge me though, I told you that stuff about the text in confidence. Book 4, Night Shift by Stephen King. Okay, coming in with a heavy hitter at number 4, with the little known author, Stephen King. This is by far my favorite Stephen King book, though admittedly, I've only read 3 Stephen King books.
Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
After liking but not loving The Stand and Carrie, I was beginning to wonder, what's all the fuss about? But now, after reading Night Shift, oh yeah, I'm a Stephen King fan, or at least a short story Stephen King fan. This collection of 20 short stories are a near perfect blend of bizarre stories. There's one where a group of sentient trucks have people trapped at a petrol station. Disgusting stories. I will never get the image of the lawnmower man out of my head. Heartbreaking stories. Another tells of a man who's debating whether or not he should put his mother out of her misery as she lays there suffering in her hospital bed. Terrifying stories. Children of the Corn is a part of our zeitgeist for a reason. You should fear he who walks behind the rose. If you're a big Stephen King reader, there are links to some of his other books, such as It, The Stand, and Salem's Lot throughout this collection, and probably some other Easter eggs that went right over my head. Though trust me, you don't need to have read those books to enjoy this one. I've never read Salem's Lot, and so learning about that town at the same time as the characters in these short stories made it more engaging for me.
Look at me.
Other than these links to Stephen King's extended multiverse, there's no common thread that draws all these tales together like the other books I'm going to talk about on this list. Because of this, jumping between stories is a bit jarring at times, as some dramatically shift in tone. Still, I can see why something like 40% of the stories in this book have been turned into movies. They are just that good. The stories, I mean. The movie adaptations, maybe not so much. Book 3, Found by various authors, edited by Gabino Iglesias and Andrew Cull. If there was a prize for best book cover, Found would have my vote. This is actually the only collection on my list that was written by different authors, 18 different authors in fact. You can tell the man that selected the stories in this collection and edited this collection, Gabino Iglesias and Andrew Cull, really love found footage films. If you're a fan of this film genre too, I'm talking things like Wreck and Creep.
Look, I don't want you to worry. Like, it's just rubber, you know, it's fake. Here, you want to test it? Good. I just want you to be comfortable because in a few moments, I am going to be swinging this axe full force towards the base of your skull.
But you haven't read any found footage books yet? Well, you're in luck. In keeping with the theme of this book, I actually recorded a vlog while I was reading it, and ironically, I haven't been able to find that footage. What I can tell you in the absence of that footage is I really enjoyed this book. but it didn't really scare me. I was cool as a cucumber while reading it and didn't freak out at all. I should really start reading this book. It's starting to freak me out, man. What was that? 18 found footage horror stories may sound like a lot of the same to you, but the format and the narrative techniques used for these stories couldn't be more diverse. In addition to the classic VHS tapes and security footage, there are other stories that are told via message and email exchanges, another is told via an autopsy transcript, and even a story that revolves around an investigation into a YouTube channel. One of the stories that stood out the most to me was the Novak Roadhouse Massacre, which takes place in South Australia, a little bit too close to home for me. This story of a man that went on a killing spree is told through a combination of witness statements and transcripts of CCTV footage. The thing is though, the alleged killer was killed before he could be brought to trial, and the locals out bush have a legend that seems to align pretty well with these horrific events. In what was another standout story to me, a small hand-built house, a deceased man has left a series of videos for his wife to view. And let's just say that these videos reveal his true nature. Imagine living with someone for the better part of your life and never truly knowing them. But there's still more that his wife must uncover. Lives are at stake. Reading this book genuinely gives you a similar feeling to putting a video in your VHS player and watching these seemingly true, horrific events play out. I would say that the sum of its parts are better than the individual stories in this one. When one recording ends, you have this morbid curiosity to watch the next one, and your feeling of fear and unease escalates with each story. Not me though, great book, I just don't scare that easy. Okay. Alright, I think that was nothing. Just some possums. Book 2. The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enrique. I've never met Mariana Enrique, but just from reading this book, I can tell you that she is one of the coolest authors out there. Another horror collection, the last one on the list by the way, and easily the best. But don't expect Enrique to follow any horror story rules that you may think exist. Enrique will be like, I'm just going to finish this story right here and let you dwell on what you think may have happened. Oh, you thought they were going to be the victim? Nope. Or how about I'm going to telegraph the ending about 3 pages before it happens, and yeah, just end it that way. You were expecting a twist? There is something so refreshing about these stories, even though yes, they involve demons and monsters and the undead. Like many horror stories I've read, it's the way that the humans treat each other which is truly terrifying. But unlike many horror stories I've read, we actually feel some empathy for the supernatural monsters. Some stories are quite short, twisted tales of death and lust, a combination that Enrique goes back to on several occasions in this collection. Other stories are just truly depressing, such as the longest story by far, Kids Who Come Back. The protagonist Mechi has the unenviable task of updating the archive of lost and disappeared children in the city of Buenos Aires. When kids start to be found, Mechi and their parents are of course overjoyed, but this joy soon turns to terror and heartbreak. I mentioned Buenos Aires just now, and that's probably the last thing I should say about this collection. The setting of these stories is so vivid, I almost feel like I traveled there. Truly one of the most impressive books I've ever read. How can we top that? Well... Book 1. The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. This sci-fi collection, written in 1951, tells the story of the Illustrated Man. Think of a man covered in tattoos, but these pictures are much more detailed than any tattoos you've ever seen, and they are put there by a time-traveling woman, a witch. These images on his body are able to move, and they tell stories of the future, or at least the future as it was thought of in 1951. While not a horror story collection, the stories in this one are often filled with despair and misery. If you are a Twilight Zone fan like me,
it is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
You are going to absolutely love this one. At the start of this book, in the prologue, the Illustrated Man finds a stranger, and he asks him if he knows where he can find a job. He has been working in carnival sideshows and circuses, but he's been unable to hold down a job as people freak out when they see these illustrations move and tell these dreary stories of the future. When the Illustrated Man lies down to rest, he warns the stranger not to look at the pictures that are covering his body. But the stranger can't resist. He becomes entranced, and as the stories of these illustrations show the stranger, that we become entranced in, for the rest of the book. This is such a cool premise for a short story collection, as while the stories are all great on their own merit, you can't help while reading them but occasionally think back to the fact that these are all being told through the illustrations on this man's body, and wonder what's going to happen to the stranger when the stories stop. A couple of my favourite tales, which will perhaps help convey the diversity in the Sci-Fi collection, are Kaleidoscope and 0 Hour. In Kaleidoscope, something has gone wrong with the spacecraft, pulling all of the crew out into space. Due to the suddenness of this incident, the men aren't able to tether themselves to their craft, and are all now drifting helplessly away from each other. Their intercoms are still working though, and this dialogue between these doomed men is fascinating. I wonder what I would do if I was floating out into space with no hope of rescue. In 0 Hour, those neighborhood kids are up to something. Mink tells her parent that they have this friend called Drill, who must be an imaginary friend, and they're all playing this game together called Invasion. Her parents pay little attention to this game until Mink says, the adults will have to die. I'll let you discover the rest of the stories in this collection for yourself, but there truly isn't a bad one in the bunch. So forget your troubles and lose yourself in the images of the illustrated man. Okay, that's my list of short story collections that I recommend you find some time to squeeze into your life, especially if you like stories that are dark, bizarre, confronting, and brilliant. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you want to see some more content like this one. Maybe at some point I'll upload that footage from the found reading vlog, if I can locate it, where I was definitely cool and nothing weird happened.
Help me.
Oh, and let us know in the comments what's the best short story collection you've ever read. Until next time though, pick up a short story, take care of yourself, much love, we out. Zoosh.